Hello and welcome to Startup Day at the Disruptive Innovation Festival. Startup Day is all about showcasing some of the best startups out there who are helping us with this transition toward a circular economy. In today's session, we are going to hear from Interval, and you might have already seen their promo video on the page you're watching this on. But whether you have or whether you haven't, don't worry, because you're going to find out more about what Interval are all about in this session. I'm joined today by Juan Pablo, who is the co-founder and project director of Interval, and he's going to tell us a lot more about what their organization does. Juan Pablo, first up, thank you very much for joining us. But let me ask you this question to start off with. Who or what is Interval? What is it you do, and what's the story behind Interval?
Well, basically what we're trying to do is to reduce waste in the a built environment, especially the construction industry. And it started when we realized that in Chile and a lot of countries in South America, when political election starts, there are a lot of materials that could get a new use, but they don't have that because they are not designing for that. So that's why we thought that if we bring design to these temporary infrastructures, especially in the built environment and especially in the construction industry, we can get new uses and avoid a tons of waste.
And Juan, have you secured any funding so far? What are you post-revenue?
Yeah, we work mainly with organizations, for example, with construction industry organizations. So we work together. We are not currently looking for fundings because we are a project-based organizations. And now we have a project running in London. We will reuse some materials from a construction site in central London. And we are also getting some support to develop a new hoarding, a new prototype for hoarding with the same construction industry organization.
Okay, so you're doing this not just in Chile where you're based, but in London as well, I see.
Yeah. I got London. Well, Interval started 2 years ago with the concern of waste within the construction industry. But 1 year ago, I got to London and I met Lucas, who is my partner, and we started to think and to propose solutions for the London case because it's a really good case because it's there are much more regulations than in South America, and there are also a lot of construction sites that we can implement our ideas.
Okay, so you're looking at reusing waste from construction sites and from political placards. So tell us, what unseen and unique opportunities do you think you have identified in designing your innovations?
Basically, we are looking for anything which is temporary in the built environment. So that's why we are primarily focused on the construction industry. And what we see is that all this temporary stuff don't have design or are not designed for the next use. They don't have the afterlife within the design. So what we are doing is to bring a design, a pre-designed those stuff to get new uses when construction ends in this case.
And when you tell people about Interval and what you do, what is it that gets people excited? What has them interested?
I think that there are many temporary infrastructures that people see them as temporary. They don't even think that they could get new uses. They assume that this is waste basically. And when we bring this way of designing, of thinking the afterlife of these material structures, they are surprised because they think that that's possible, and we will use the same money, the same materials. It's only a design problem, and in that way, that's what most surprise people.
I take it you have to work with lots of different organizations to make this happen. And my goodness, having to work with all these different political parties, one presumes too. Maybe you can be the uniting force that brings all of these parties together.
Yeah, that's true. The main problem that Interval is facing today is not only about our ideas. It's more about the connection of different organizations. We have different targets and we have different interests. But when we pitch our ideas, for every people makes sense basically. But the problem is what you say. The problem is and I think in cities that's the main problem today. It's not only about a creativity, but it's more about making the links to create this kind of more sustainable system within the city.
And how do you find customers who will use, let's say, your redesign placard setup?
For example, in the case of like the political campaign, what we did was to connect with a municipality or borough in Santiago, and they were interested in like creating and using these materials. So what we did was to connect with the political party, saying, okay, we have a receptor, and they can use the material. The only thing that you have to do is to change the design. Will not be like a more expensive, but only change the design under our rules.
Tell us, for anyone who hasn't seen the video, what is it you do with these placards once the political campaign is finished?
Well, today all these materials are become waste basically, and what we did was to standardize the construction of these political advertising boards, and after that, the same material could be used to build like a kind of public space or a public pavilion for a poor municipality in Santiago, using the same materials at the same cost, but only changing the initial design.
And have you literally done this? Does it remain an aspiration to build this?
We only built a prototype with a political party in Santiago, and it worked. And so for the next election, we are trying to reach our objective, which is build like a pavilion. We prototype the model, like the constructed system, and it worked, but not the pavilion, like the big structure.
And be honest here, are you taking sides in the whole political campaign when it comes to whose placards you use, or is it genuinely you're looking for all political parties to take up this system?
No, all political parties. We are all interested in those who have like a more sustainable or environmental concerns. So yeah, we're open to work with any political party from right to left. So yeah, that's not important for us.
And tell us just a little bit more about what you're doing in construction as well, so people can understand what your offer is there.
Well, in construction sites, we see that construction industry is the industry that produces more waste within urban environments, and between these waste, there are some temporary infrastructures that we are putting we're focused on them because we know when they are being used and we know when they are not being used anymore. So that's why if we are able to bring design to those infrastructures, we can give them like a new use when construction ends. So that could be like a hoarding, like a different scaffolding materials, and like all which is temporary basically.
All right, great to hear. So some people will be wondering, what has Interval got to do with the transition to a circular economy? What's your answer to that?
I think that we are creating links within the city to reuse materials. That I think that, as I said like before, this is not only about creativity, not only about like a design. It's about creating links between organizations that are apparently not like related. But if you make this link, you can like give like a better use of materials and make like a city more circular.
And what happens next for you then? You say you're working in London, you're working in Chile. What will happen next for Interval to make?
Well, now we are based in London, and we are trying to push 2 projects that we are working on. So I think for 2019 we will be based in London, and hopefully having like a success with those 2 projects, like for reusing materials and also innovating and proposing a new hoarding. And yeah, this is like next year we are focused on that project, and then let's see what happens, if we can go to Santiago or South America or other parts of the world.
And I guess the beauty of what it is that you're proposing is that actually any country in the world can benefit from taking the approach that you are outlining here.
For sure. Like basically hoarding materials and all this scaffolding are used in every construction in the world. And so that's why we see that there is like a big potential for bringing innovation or circular designs to the construction industry.
But I guess the world is full of great ideas that don't quite make it. What's going to help you scale up the ideas that you have with Interval so that we can see them in practice all around the world?
I think one thing is to solve a problem to private organizations, in this case for the construction industry, in the way that you can solve them a problem, which is like avoiding waste, or like a decreasing the expenses in terms of taking waste. This is one important problem, but the other is to create it's like a policy problem. For example, in South America, there is no awareness of these problems because there is no policy yet. But if we see in London, for example, or in big part of Europe, there is like a more regulation, and organization needs to take care more, need to take care about waste. So they are more keen to open up to bring this kind of solutions.
Okay, Juan, thank you so much for joining us and telling us about Interval. Really appreciate you telling us the tale of what you could bring to, number one, political campaigns, and secondly, what the construction industry can take from this as well. And it seems to me like a solution that can be replicated in, well, all geographies, basically.
Yeah.
Any final words, Juan?
No, thank you for you and the Ellen MacArthur Foundation to bring this opportunity to us. And also, I think this is a good, it brings energy for us to keep doing this kind of initiatives.
Well, thank you so much for being a part of Startup Day. And Startup Day actually features dozens of organizations who, like Interval, have some sort of solution that helps towards the transition toward a circular economy. We've showcased a handful of them already today, and there'll be many more being showcased throughout today until we reach our finale at 5 p.m. in the DIF Live studio, where we'll be sifting through all of the different startups that have been showcased today in that show. So make sure you join us there at 5 p.m. But for now, I'm going to thank Juan Pablo for joining us from Interval, and I'm going to say goodbye to the DIF audience. Thanks for being here.
Thank you. Thank you everyone. Bye-bye.